set up a shiur for yourself to remind you, or have your wife light for you. But you can't eat a meal or do malacha. Malacha here is referred to as real occupational work of the hands, anything that will move your mind beforehand, like to write an article for Chabad. Good example. Okay, so the Seder, as we said this last Sunday as well, we'll repeat it anyways, the Seder is that we always first recite the first 2 or 3 blessings. The first night it was 3, now it's already 2 blessings. Only afterwards do we begin the lighting, and because of course we want all the candles included in both blessings of Sha'asanisim and Asher Kedeshanu, and we only begin singing Haner Salol according to Chabad custom once all the candles are lit. Others, however, already begin singing it after one candle is lit. The reason behind our custom is to normally do so for a half an hour, learning Torah. It is not necessarily our custom to say Mizmarim, especially if you are lighting at night. We do not say Tehillim at night. So we don't say the different Tehillims that others are accustomed to recite. The menorah has to stay stationary where it was lit for at least a half hour until after nightfall. Once the half hour is finished, after nightfall, it's not a half hour from when you start. If you started lighting 20 minutes before nightfall, so it would be 50 minutes after you lit, half hour after nightfall. The menorah is now allowed to be moved, and we had on Sunday was our first Hilchos of Chanukah for this year, and that's where we mentioned that it should be moved if there's a fire hazard involved. Person should move it. There's other opinions involved here, but that's the bottom line. After a half hour after nightfall, it may be moved. And of course, if there's a possibility of fire hazard, then it should be moved elsewhere or extinguished. Yeah.
So there's no difference really lighting B'chal on the week and lighting on Erev Shabbos. I mean, as far as how long it has to burn.
What do you mean by no difference?
If it has to burn for 15 minutes during the week, it also has to burn 15 minutes on Erev Shabbos.
On Erev Shabbos, we usually light it. We light it a lot earlier, so it has to burn for an hour and a half, however long earlier you lit. Here we're discussing moving it on Shabbos. Is a different story. We're going to get to that soon about the Shabbos line. We're going to just give a final summary on that.
When does the clock start on the eating issue? Right at shiur, once it's completely stopped eating until you light? Is that what you're saying?
Begin from sunset, yeah. Okay, let's go to Erev Shabbos. Regarding Erev Shabbos,
Can I interrupt for a second? I read a halacha which says that you cannot say a bracha unless you have 2 people besides you and your wife present. Now, how strong an opinion is that? Does Chabad ever hold that way? What is the status?
and the answer to your question is that when you're lighting at a time that people are still awake, you don't need to have 2 people. You don't need to have anyone. A person is allowed to light with a bracha right after Shkia or right after Seisek Yechavim, and nobody has to be there at all. Then you can light with a blessing. The question is only there if he's lighting when people are already mostly asleep. Say 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock, people aren't out anymore. Here in Svas could be a little earlier, New York City could be a little later. Every place according to their population. That's already when it becomes a question, and over there, the way we rule, this has nothing to do with Chabad, this is Mishnah Brura, Pri Chadash, and many other paiskim, that a person definitely until Chatzais he may light with a bracha, even after Chatzais, if there's at least one person awake, his wife for example, he can still light with a bracha until Aleis HaShachar.
Okay. Excuse me, one more question. The period from the time that you light until the time that it's all right to move the chalakiyah, you said that it was good to study Torah and engage in activities of that nature. What about davening Mariv? Would that fall under that category?
So those who light right after Shkia daven Mariv only afterwards. They go to a minyan. If you're davening by Yechidus, if you're davening by yourself, then yeah, you could daven next to the candles. That's not a problem.
No, I'm talking about with the minyan, going to shul and
So it's customary to stay near. If you have no other minyan, okay, you have no other minyan. That's what we do on Shabbos. We have Shabbos, we go straight to shul. We don't stay near the candles. But if you're able to stay near the candles and have a later minyan, that's what should be done. Okay. So let's now summarize this checklist of Erev Shabbos, Motzei Shabbos, and we're going to go straight into the detailed halachas. So this Erev Shabbos, as applies to every Shabbos Chanukah, we of course have to light 2 sets of candles: the Shabbos candles, which is the wife, the Chanukah candles, which is the men, and in the event that there is a man at home. If there is no man at home, she's doing both, and if there's no woman at home, he's doing both. They belong to both of them, but we just give over we delegate the duties. In the case of husband and wife, Shabbos candles to the wife and Chanukah to the husband. Okay, so the Chanukah candles have to be lit first, before the Shabbos candles. The reason for this is because, according to the Minhagei, once you light Shabbos candles, Shabbos has already begun. How can you then go ahead and light Chanukah candles? So therefore, all Klal Yisrael, even those who argue in the Minhagei, we all light Chanukah candles first. The earliest time. So here we have a little bit of a problem. If we say that the time of Chanukah candle lighting is only after sunset, then how do you fulfill the mitzvah on Erev Shabbos? You can't light it after sunset. So you have to light it beforehand, but we all know that Hadlaka is a mitzvah. The lighting is what does the mitzvah. If you lit it at a time that it wasn't the mitzvah, you don't feel obligation. If I tomorrow morning light my Chanukah candles and it stays lit a half hour after nightfall of Wednesday, I didn't fulfill the mitzvah, but it stayed lit like everyone else. In fact, I had a more beautiful menorah than everyone else. I had more oil than everyone else. It stayed lit till 12 o'clock at night. Not Yetzik, because it's the act of lighting that does the mitzvah. So here too, how are you going to do the mitzvah if you light early? It doesn't matter if it stays lit afterwards. So what's the conclusion? The conclusion is that in truth, even during the week, there is an exception that in a time of need, one may light starting from Plaga Mincha, which is 1 hour and 15 minutes before sunset, according to the final ruling today. It used to be accepted that it was 1 hour and 15 minutes before Tzeisak Chavim. And if you're following Tzeisak Chavim and Rabbeinu Tam, you're stuck. So it's actually something. Those who follow Rabbeinu Tam and they want to be machma like the 1 hour and 15 minutes before Tzeisak Chavim, they can't light Chanukah candles on Erev Shabbos. It's a little bit funny of two chumras clashing. Anyway, so bottom line is that we all today are accustomed to Plaga Mincha is 1 hour and 15 minutes before sunset, so we have plenty of time. Okay, within that period, it's, by the way, it's Zmanis, it's fluctuating minutes, it depends where you are in the world. In some areas it can be 2 hours, in some areas it can be 15 minutes, if you're in the north. Right? It depends where you are. Plaga Mincha may not be that much time. I believe here, Plaga Mincha is probably like 3:30-ish, something around that time. You can look in the calendar, but we have a little bit of time. Okay, so within that frame, that's when we light, with a blessing, of course, and we have to place enough oil to last at least a half hour after Tzeisak Chavim. We try to daven mincha beforehand for the same reason. Chanukah candles is a symbolizing, in essence, that the next day of Chanukah has begun. This year will be that the 6th night has begun. Well, how can you then go ahead and daven mincha saying it's still the 5th day when you already lit Chanukah candles saying it's already the 6th day? It's a little bit of contradiction, hypocrisy. So we daven mincha first, and then we light the Chanukah candles. But in the event that there's no minyan, you can still daven mincha afterwards. It's better to daven with a minyan later than to daven by yourself earlier.
It's also customary to have a larger Shabbos.
So since the shamash is there so we don't get benefit, it obviously wouldn't serve that purpose if the shamash goes out before the time of benefit arrives. If before nighttime the shamash has already done his job, then what have we accomplished with the shamash? We haven't accomplished anything. So yes, it is customary to have a longer shamash, so it lasts towards the evening. Where should the menorah be placed? This is the question of questions that many people have and deal with by Shabbos Chanukah, and the answer is our first and foremost factor is safety. First and foremost. That's not just what the Red Cross and Tzala are telling you, that's what the Mechaber says in Shulchan Aruch. It says in the time of Sakana, put it on your table and light it. So anyone who's worried about their kids, anyone who's worried about grandkids, about anyone getting involved in knocking down the candles, or they're going to shul, no one's going to be home, they don't feel comfortable leaving it there, light it on your table in a safe area, and you're good. But those who desire to light it in the proper place, they want to light it, let's say, by the doorway. So you don't want to leave it there the whole Shabbos. So as we've learned in our Muktzah classes, you can always move things with a shiur, with an irregularity. So you can always wait for it to go out, extinguish, and then you can move it with your feet, the back of your hands. many different ways of moving it out of the way to prevent it from breaking. You obviously cannot move in the regular way. There is no way to revoke the muktzah status from a menorah. It's impossible, according to halacha. The only thing you could do to be allowed to move with your hands is to place an item of value, of greater value than the menorah, etc., on top of the stool or chair or whatever you're using to uphold that menorah. If you place that there before Shabbos, then that allows you on Shabbos to move the chair out of the way if you need. With the menorah, of course.
A sefer is not good enough for menorah.
A sefer that a person will use. A lot of times in these cases, a person looks for the dustiest sefer he's never used before, doesn't care about getting damaged. No, it has to be something of greater value. It has to be something of importance, something that you would, that you would use over Shabbos. So this would be a perfect example to put this sefer next to it, put maybe some tin foil over it, it's a bit dirty. Put it on the chair, right? You would use this Shabbos Chanukah. And you can then be able to move it without a shiur. Regarding on the table, whatever table you're lighting it in, so whatever you do with the Shabbos candles the whole year, it's the same deal with the Chanukah candles.
You have to leave that object on there with it?
Until Tzeis Kechavim, yeah. Here in Israel, from sunset until Tzeis Kechavim, 20 minutes.
The extra object that you're using to be able to move it, you have to leave.
Yes, it has to be on the surface, on the stool, the chair, yeah.
After says.
Yeah. Okay, after Shabbos, in shul, we have two different orders. In shul, the order is that first we light the Chanukah candles because we want to delay Shabbos as much as possible. It's a mitzvah to take out Shabbos later. And then we say Havdalah, in those shuls that still do Havdalah. It used to be that every shul did it. Today, not so common anymore in every shul. But at home, the accepted custom is that first we say Havdalah, and then we light the Chanukah candles. The order then is that we, of course, say Bracha Chayin on the wine. We light the Chanukah menorah, and then we say V'yitin.
And that's it. And Havdalah is normal Havdalah.
It's an absolutely normal Havdalah, no difference. Okay, that's our checklist. That was at the Hamaisu Eker, the bottom line, practical laws of what to do, and now we're going to go into the.
Let me ask you, so I didn't hear what you said about why we use a longer Shabbos on Erev Shabbos.
The reason why we use the Shamash to begin with is because there's a prohibition against benefiting from the Chanukah candles for your own use. Now let's go back 100 years ago, 150 years ago, without electricity. Those candles, the Chanukah candles, were just like any other candle in your house. You used candles for light. So it was very possible and there was great worry that the Chanukah candles will be used to give you light, to read things, to look at something, to do things that you do in light. So because of that, we have a shamash that's placed there. That if we're going to get benefit, it's from the shamash. The shamash I can get benefit from. The shamash is serving to remove the possibility of benefiting from the Chanukah candles, which have a prohibition against getting benefit on during the first half hour. Today that we have electricity, we don't understand why we have a shamash. What's the shamash for? We use our shamash is the lights in the room. That's the shamash. What do we need? But nonetheless, it's a minhag yisrael that we have, and we keep to it. There's a special, also Kabbalistic meaning behind the.
Shamash is to light the candles.
Well, that's one purpose, and the second purpose is to, as I just said, serve as a source of light, just in case you need to use it.
Rabbi, you said earlier that on Friday afternoon that it's customary for the woman to light the Shabbos candle and the man the
First
and the woman light the candle for
Shabbos candles?
no, I mean
Hanukkah? He'll light the Shabbos candles?
I don't know, doesn't matter, but kind of, I mean, would we be?
I would suggest if a woman tells her husband, it's really not fair, you've been lighting it the whole week, give me a try, I want to do it this time, you say, no problem, I'll light the Shabbos candles. I think it's a fair trade.
Okay, so it's not it's a custom.
My answer is the following,
It's a
okay?
thing.
The answer is as follows. The obligation of any household mitzvah includes Shabbos candles, includes Hanukkah candles, includes b'dikas chametz, includes many things that are applicable to the household, putting up mezuzahs, are on the husband. Okay? The obligation of this is on the husband for the reason that traditionally the husband was always considered the breadwinner. The husband was always the one who, in what I can call slang, wore the pants in the house, ran the show, They were the master of the home. I know today I can get in trouble for saying that. But that's how it always used to be traditionally. And that's how it should be till today.
With the wife's permission.
Uh-huh. That's how Hashem created the relationship to last. Those who think otherwise can definitely not attest to a statistic that shows improvement in marriages. And in any event, so bottom line is that these mitzvahs are the husband's responsibility to make sure they get done. Now, so usually we say mitzvah boy yesem mitzvah shluchai. Whenever you have a mitzvah upon you, you should do it yourself. What are you giving someone else to do? Hire a maid to mop your floor. No problem. There's no mitzvah for you to mop your floor if it's not before Shabbos. So during the week, hire a maid to cook for you. There's no mitzvah for you to cook for yourself. But a mitzvah of God, what are you handing over to somebody else to do? You should want to do it yourself.
Well,
So therefore we say,
so
let me
you're sick or
conclude,
something.
right? So let me conclude. So therefore, initially, of course, it should be the husband doing the b'dikas cham, it should be the husband going in and doing the adlakas neiros Chanukah, and ideally also adlakas neiros Shabbos. So with adlakas neiros Shabbos, we have a special custom and halacha recorded for a few different reasons that it's given over to the wife. That this mitzvah was given over to, even though it's the husband's responsibility, she has the delegated rights to be able to carry it out.
Take care of it.
The mitzvah of lighting Shabbos candles. So that's her mitzvah. And the mitzvah, and by Chanukah candles, we don't find that, so it belongs to the husband. So technically, from the letter of the law, can a husband have his wife light for him? Absolutely. And in certain scenarios, that's what actually we say should be done. For example, the husband's not at home. The husband's sick, he can't get up. And we're not allowed to move the menorah once it's lit. So if he's not able to get up to the menorah and we can't light it next to him, so then she would light for him. If he's not at home, he's coming back at 12 o'clock at night, he wants to eat a nice big meal, can't eat until he lights, can't find a shiur, so he can tell his wife, just light for me and that's it. In such a case, they're yaitza because the household has a menorah lit in it. So the mitzvah is fulfilled. But it wasn't fulfilled in its utmost way, which is mitzvah b'yesem and shluchah. The person should himself fulfill the mitzvah. And so to by Shabbos candles, if the husband would light the candles instead of the wife, even with the wife's permission, it would be lacking in that delegation that it was given as a tikkun for the woman, that she should be the one lighting it. So we try not to, verge off the tradition of how these things are meant to be done. But technically, the mitzvah is still fulfilled no matter which gender lights the candles. In fact, you can even ask your next door neighbor to light the candles for you. You can ask anyone, as long as they are Jewish and above the age of bar mitzvah and bas mitzvah.
In your son's home, it's also better that he would, you don't want to yield to your he's already in bar mitzvah stage, you want him to do it himself?
So you're asking the famous question of the difference between Sephardim and Ashkenazi. In an Ashkenazi home, we know that all the males of the family light, while in a Sephardi home, only the father of the home lights. And so Sephardim, they will actually never light Chanukah candles until they get married and have their own home. They don't light Chanukah candles. But you're asking a different question. You're asking how can we have more than one person light in the home if you already fulfill the mitzvah with one candle? That's in essence your question. A little bit.
You gave me more credit, I think, That's good question.
I think you're asking the following.
Okay.
If we're saying that it's the obligation, it's not individual, it's not personal, it's on home.
Yeah.
So how do we see today that the Ashkenazi customs, all the males in the home, the mitzvah was fulfilled, the mitzvah was fulfilled. I put up a mezuzah and all that we do. There's no need. So the mitzvah's already done. So there's no, so is there an issue to have a mezuzah? Maybe it's Baal Tesef, but the point is, you already filled the mitzvah, I can say a bracha on it, and the answer. So there's two ways of learning. And there's two different ways of learning in the Pesach. One way is that when the sages initially established the mitzvah of Chanukah candles, they're the one who created the whole mitzvah to begin with, that we can say they created an option called Mahadrin, which allows you to have every household member light. So it's not a bracha levatala. So even if I was yaitzi, he can still choose to light on his own and do the Mahadrin mitzvah. Another way of understanding it is that we actually have a mind to fulfill the obligation for all those family members who are lighting at home. But the first approach is the main approach.
Excuse me. So when you say family members, it includes women.
Yes, they are definitely family members.
So there's no problem with women lighting their own Chanukah?
So, according to Ashkenazi custom, there is no prohibition against women lighting the Hanukkah candles. They are not doing the bracha l'batala. From a pure halachic perspective, they are viewed equal to the status of a male family member that's lighting in addition to the husband, to the father. Nonetheless, the custom is that even Ashkenazim, who accepted the tradition of every family member lighting, only the males accepted that tradition, not the females. We don't. We discussed this on Sunday. There's a few reasons brought down for why the woman never accepted it, but that remains a tradition that women were not accustomed to light individually. But if a woman really wants to, according to Ashkenazi practice, there's no problem for her to
With
do so.
brachas, obviously, with brachas.
Correct.
The question about the Shabbos was not what it's for, but why we need to have a larger one on Erev Shabbos.
Because you're lighting, let's say, half hour before sunset. If your shamash only lasts an hour, you need to have the and your shamash has already gone to sleep.
But your Shabbos candles are going to be lit.
Right next to your Hanukkah candles?
No. But
Well,
they could-
if they are, then
Light
they're
up
your
the whole room.
shamash. Good. So if you're lighting Hanukkah candles and your Shabbos candles, correct. You don't need to have a long shamash. You have a whole bunch of long shamash. But if you're lighting it in a different area,
So that's the reason, because we're lighting earlier.
yeah.
So the candle lighting time, Erev Shabbos for Hanukkah candles is 3:30 around now, this time, I mean, 3:30?
Plug them in. I have to look in the
That's
specific,
the
in the
earliest you
precise
can do, right?
calendar.
That's the earliest you can do.
If Shkia right now is 436, so and candle lighting is about 406. It's about 3:30, 3:40, give or take. Probably plugging
You
in.
can, first time you can.
You can start lighting Hanukkah candles from that time.
And if you are crazy rushed in unusual situations and you need Shabbos in homes on Erev Shabbos, and you like, if 20 more minutes went by, half hour, you can still
100%. You have until Shkia to light.
to light the Hanukkah
But precisely because of that reason, you should specifically light at the beginning.
in the beginning.
Yeah.
I mean,
Even if your whole family won't be around, you say, listen, we're going to be lighting at 3:40. People are there, people are not there, you light. They go, Mom, I can't believe you lit. You told.
And then they have to burn them for an hour.
So then, yeah, the earlier you light it, the more they'll have to burn so long. But they usually, you fill up a glass with oil, it'll last a good 2, 3, 4
After
hours.
nightfall, they still have to go.
Yeah. Not so much time.
3:28 today.
3:20?
28.
Huh?
3:28.
2:28 plugging in. Okay, I said about
The
usually.
nightfall is about 5:15, I think.
Rabbi,
Yeah.
one question.
So that'd be 5:45.
If a woman lights 3 times in a row, does that raise her level of obligation, like a vow?
If a woman lights the Hanukkah candles 3
3
times in a
years in a
row,
row.
What's that then?
So that she really can't stop unless she...
so
has
my
a vow
answer
now.
to you is as follows. Ideally, yes, because once again, women are included in the Mahadrim and the Mahadrin, according to Ashkenazi understanding, according to Ashkenazi custom. Even the woman in Ashkenazi custom never really did the mitzvah. Nonetheless, technically, they are included in the Mahadrim mitzvah. Therefore, if they went ahead and did the Mahadrim mitzvah, then technically we should say they should continue due to the vow. However, if they did it because they didn't know, we then told them, by the way, do you know that the tradition of your grandmother and your great-grandmother going all the way back forever was that women never lit, and you're starting something new that was never done, you were yetzi with your husband, and then you tell her what other place can write, the Mishnah Berurah brings, and then Shulchan Shlomo. It's to emphasize the idea that you're not independent from your husband. Husband and wife are chad gufa, they're one body, they're one soul. You know, a woman lights in addition to her husband, she's saying, I'm different than you, I'm not yetzi with you. You are one and I'm another, and that can express itself in many other areas in the house, even for a friend. So if the woman hears it then and says, oh my gosh, so I really shouldn't have done this, then it was a mistake in minhag, and it's not considered an idol.
Even 3 years in a row.
Correct, even 10 years in a row. If she says, I wasn't aware, in other words, when she took upon herself this custom, it was taken upon herself without the proper knowledge behind it, and therefore it's not considered as a neder. Okay, before we begin going through different details, we'll just give a little Dvar Torah introduction into a message from the Chanukah holiday that we can all take. And that is, I think, one of the main messages that, or very important messages that we take from the Chanukah holiday. is a talk in which the Rebbe described the Mesiras Nefesh, the willingness of the Hashmonaim to give up their lives for the sake of God, for the sake of religion. And it's not required in all aspects or all situations. A person, a Jew, is not required to be proactive to give up his life. He's required that if he's threatened, he has to give up his life, but not to be proactive, to, edge someone on so he'll burn you at the stake. Yeah, I got it. I did my Mesiras Nefesh. It's not proactive. It's something if in a defense that you come and you're placed in that situation, so you give up your life for Hashem. But to be proactive and put your life in danger for the sake of God's thing is not required. And the Rebbe points out that the lesson we see from the Hashmonaim is really connected with the whole Chanukah story of what this is all about. The whole idea of the Chanukah story is that a Jew has to live above the letter of the law. That a Jew has to realize that the Torah contains a holiness, and holiness is similar to oil, which is chachma, which is wisdom, which is above human intellect, above human understanding. That the Torah contains a holiness and a kedusha that's way above and aloof from human understanding, and therefore the Yavanim, they wanted to internalize everything into seichel. Everything had to be seichel, everything to be intellectualized and understood. And if necessary, we would demote and defile the Torah from its purity, from its holiness, from its aloofness, in order for that to happen. And the Hashmonaim were teaching us is that we have to strive to come to the Torah, not to bring the Torah down to us. And God's word is God's word, whether we understand it or don't understand it. And the relation between religion and God has to always remain. And we see this in history, how we have Jewish groups who remain faithful to the Torah, not willing to make any iota of a change, even if the seichel, the mind, the intellect, gave many reasons. Let's reform this, let's reform that. Times are different, let's modernize things. And that sect of Jewry is around till today. While the sects of Jewry for thousands of years that have always tried to make innovations and changes, they've all disappeared. And it's all come from the idea of let's bring the Torah down to us. Meaning, let's change God's will, let's change God's view of things into a way that we can relate to it on our own. And we see history repeating itself again and again and again, and it's so funny how, in history they always say that you should learn history, not to repeat history. But unfortunately, that even when you learn history, we see that history reruns itself. And today we have different fragment groups that, again, try to do the same thing, change the holiness of the Torah, and in order so it fit more into their human intellect and human mind. Okay, the mitzvah of lighting Chanukah candles. The mitzvah of Chanukah candles is considered one of the 7 big rabbinical commands. You know that there's Taryag mitzvahs, 613 mitzvahs is written in the Gemara, Amar Reb Simlai, right, that we learn it from our pasuk on Moshe Rabbeinu, Torah Tzivah Moshe, that is gematria of 611, then plus the 2 that Hashem told us, is 613. We also have a tradition based on Svarim that there's an additional 7 mitzvahs which are rabbinical commands, which total for the word keser. And it's brought down that the keser mitzvahs, the Alter Rebbe brings in Tanya, the 620 total mitzvahs, serve as the channel, as the pipeline for our souls to receive godliness, to receive its connection with God in this world and the next world. And those 7 mitzvahs that make the keser, one of them is Adakas Neus Chanukah. So it's one of the big 7. It's recorded in the Gemara, just like regarding Shabbos candles, one who was careful, who was mahudr with Chanukah candles, merits having children who are Torah scholars. Once again, this correlates with the idea of oil. Oil is chachma. And that's why we mentioned in our Sunday class that the person should use the best oil, which is olive oil. And of olive oil, the best oil is edible olive oil, eating olive oil. That's the best of the best. And that's when we can get edible Talmidei Chacham and not inedible Talmidei Chacham. The Rebbe points out an interesting observation regarding the Chanukah candles, that all the types of candles that we have lit always serve an outside external purpose. There's shul candles, which had a big deal about it in Shulchan Aruch. Today we just have electricity. But if there's no electricity, then people would donate candles all the time. When you would sell an aliyah for Chanukah, a person would say 5 candles, another guy 10 candles. Candles was a very basic asset for a shul. You need it for light. And so the purpose of that candle, the shul candle, even though it has holiness, it has kedushas of a mitzvah, for the sake of giving light so you see what's going on. So it has a purpose. Shabbos candles as well. Shabbos candles are not about, the sanctity of Shabbos, it's so holy, it's so beautiful. It's about passion, so you have light, so you eat by light, so you see your food. Right? A person that can't see his food, we all know what the Jews went through with the man. They were suffering, it says. Hashem calls it in Parshas Eikev in oppression, a yisurim. Hashem called it a suffering. If you don't see what you're eating, half the taste is gone. So a person needs the Shabbos candles to see what he's eating. A person needs the Shabbos candles to shalom bayis. So he doesn't trip over something on the ground and then scream at everyone in the house. Shalom bayis, right? So that's the purpose of the candles, is to avoid those things from happening. Also, in the Minhagei in the temple, the candles in the temple, they served as a testimony to the world that the Shekhinah dwelt on Klal Yisrael. So it's brought down that there was a daily miracle that occurred with the menorah in the temple. That the Ner HaMaravi would remain lit constantly. Some say that he started with that and ended with it, but in any event, there was a miracle that occurred with the Chanukah miracle, really, meaning that the oil lasted more than regular, that occurred with the menorah for the sake of publicizing to the world that God dwells here. But in the Chanukah candles, it's not there for any external purpose. Here the Rabbi points out that even though the purpose of lighting Chanukah candles is to publicize the miracle, this is not its main purpose, as we can see from the halacha, that in a time of sakana you can't light outside your home, you light inside your home. And today, many even initially light inside their home, as was the custom once the custom of Ramah and earlier Rishonim. So it's not an integral part of the mitzvah, it's an additional asset to the mitzvah. So if it's not an integral part of the mitzvah to publicize to the public, we see that the lighting of the candle is the light itself. The light itself contains the kedusha. That is the kedusha itself. It's not for an external purpose. It's not to gain something outside of it, and that's why the actual lights contain such holiness. As we find, the only candles that are forbidden in use are the Chanukah candles. Shul candles you can use, Shabbos candles you can make use to see things,
So if everybody wants to turn the lights off in your house while you're lighting Hanukkah candles because they want to...
So you can do a beautiful kumsitz romance with God. Yeah, it's true. It's a big romance with God. You can have a beautiful kumsitz, turn off all the lights, just stare at the Hanukkah candles. But if you want to then pick something up and look at it, so today I have to worry. Today nobody reads books anymore. They just open up their cell phone and they have their own lights, so they don't need it anymore. If anyone is still old style, they have a book, like one of these hard covers, then they would need soft covers.
You could say that
They would need to then turn on the light. They cannot use. And the chatchila, we also don't use the shamash button. It's like an insurance, backup insurance, but you should turn on your light in order to read. But there's nothing wrong with enjoying the light. Just sitting there and enjoying the light, that's very spiritual, to sit there and internalize the shine.
But what if you're wanting to, you want the romance, you're not necessarily thinking it's like any candle. The superimposed idea that that's like any candle making the room look more
Right,
glowy
the
and
post
nice.
can bring that it's mutter. The post can bring, let's say if you have a blackout, do you have to leave your house? You have to leave your room? I said no. The isser is to do something near it, to use its light proactively. To just be around is not a problem. Who is obligated to light Chanukah candles? As we know, every homeowner. We already discussed that. But here I want to focus on the following. First of all, if you're in an area without Jews, only Goyim around, are you obligated to light Hanukkah candles? The answer is yes. The obligation applies even if there's no Jews around. So Pesumei Nisa here, as we already said, is not the main aspect, and therefore the mitzvah still applies, even if there's no one around. There's no Goyim, there's no Jews, there's just Goyim, etc. If somebody is homeless, does he have a chiyuv to light Hanukkah candles? Let's first deal with the homeless question, which Baruch Hashem is not relevant, and it shouldn't be relevant to any Jew. And then we'll deal with a very practical question, because many of us, I'm sure, become temporarily homeless for a night or two once in a while. We go traveling, we go through a 24-hour trip, we're temporarily homeless. The Rabbi once spoke that those who come for Tishrei, who come for the holidays to visit him, so they're considered like those people who would go in Gullus and, be homeless basically for a certain amount of time. You know, 4 hours, you don't have your own place, you don't have your own food. In any event, so we find here a major debate amongst Poskim based on Rishonim regarding how to understand the mitzvah of lighting Chanukah candles. Some understand it that it's going in the same party line we said earlier. It's a obligation on the household, on the house, on the physical structure. The physical structure, the home, has to have a Chanukah candle lit. Now, if there's no one who lives there, so there's no one to place that obligation. But if there is someone who lives there, the obligation falls on the owner. It's very similar to mezuzah. Does a person have a chiyuv to put on a mezuzah if he's homeless? No. So that's one approach. That's one way of learning it. And so they learn that anyone who basically doesn't have a home is pater. They were never obligated in the mitzvah of Chanukah candles. So it was understood from Rashi Masechah Shabbos, who says the one who's on a ship is not required to light Chanukah candles, as a ship is not a house. That could be he wasn't referring to the cruise ships of today. These cruise ships, they can be huge mansions. But a boat, you're on a canoe. You're canoeing for 3 weeks, or for a week. You don't have a home. So you wouldn't be, Rashi says that you're put from lighting Chanukah candles. And so, likewise, rules, so is also the implication of Tosfos. Tosfos says there are people who do not have homes and cannot fulfill the mitzvah of Chanukah lighting, which seems to imply that why not just take a candle and light? Just because they're homeless means they're candleless? Right? You can be homeless and be candleful. So the understanding is that he's trying to say, like Rashi, his grandfather, that you're pater, you're exempt from the mitzvah. And so rules the Igros Moshe Halacha L'Mais in Yerideh, Volume 3, that if you don't have a home, then you don't light Chanukah candles. However, many poskim argue. There are Rishonim who say, by the ship case, that you do have to light candles on the ship. It's an individual mitzvah upon yourself that if you own a home and are staying there, you do in your home. So when you have a home, that's where you have to fulfill it. But if you don't have a home, then you just light it wherever you are, anywhere you are. So bottom line is that the best thing is to, anyone who's homeless should get a home for Chanukah. They should be invited to have homes for Chanukah. And they should be able to light with a bracha. Now what about those people who are traveling? A person is traveling from here to New York, they're taking a flight, they're leaving to the airport at 3 o'clock, they're arriving in New York. It's better the opposite case because you are losing hours. You're coming here, you're leaving 3 o'clock, you're going to be arriving here already, it's going to be the next day, the next morning. What do you do with Chanukah lighting? You don't have a home right now. Tonight you don't have a home. So this is this machlekes. If you ask of Moshe, what's your pater from lighting? Your pater, you don't have the obligation to light it. If you ask the other Rishonim and the other poskim who rule based on that, they say no, you still have an obligation to light. Bottom line is that there's no problem in telling him, do your best to try to light the candles wherever you could. If you can't, you can't. That's regardless of the machlekes. If you don't have a physical way of lighting it, so it doesn't matter what the Rabbanim say, you can't light it. There's no physical way of doing it. You cannot light a flame on an airplane flight. Unless you want to get yourself with that, you'll have another shiur the next night. Rabbi, how do I light in prison? How do I light candles in jail? Can you bail me out from your previous psak? Telling me to light on the plane.
What about prison?
So if you don't have matches or you don't have candles, it's nothing to do with what halacha says. You don't have the ability to light. So if a person doesn't have the ability, they don't have the ability. But if a person does, they can go to a corner of the airport. It's already nighttime or it's past Plag Mincha. Their flight's taking off at 5 o'clock, right after Shkia, but it's not enough time, a half hour. But they can light from Plag. Let them light from Plag Mincha at least light a little bit. They light without a bracha from Plag Mincha. Okay, do the best that you can. But obviously in the plane, there's nothing, you cannot light a flame in the plane. And in such a situation, you shouldn't schedule a flight in that way. But if it was already done, it already happened, or something's an emergency, God forbid the person has to travel for. In all these situations, then the person would light without a blessing because of this machlekes. Because even if they spoke to they spoke the head captain, he's Jewish, and said, you know what, you're gonna come and make a bracha for everyone here in front of the plane. We have still a shiloh. We have a shiloh because nobody here is chayiv, so maybe we'll turn into a shul, but since when are planes shuls? And this is a public minhagei, we have a whole machlekas if you can say a bracha by public minhagei. If you have a little Jewish child that's below bar mitzvah, tell him, say the bracha for him, let him repeat after you, and then you can say the bracha. That's a way to escape the bracha, the chashash bracha levatal. But otherwise, bracha is edom akvis, the blessing does never invalidates the mitzvah, and the best thing is just to light it without the blessing and not enter into the
So
doubt.
obviously, you're renting a home on a trip.
That's something else. That's your home.
That's a total obvious thing, right? I mean,
That's
it's
your home.
Hotel room, probably can't.
Hotel room is your home. Once again, it's all your home. We're talking about someone who's on an airplane
Yeah.
or on a bus. What are you going to do if you're taking overnight? You're on a bus. You're in a car. You're traveling overnight in a car. Such situation, so you would stop, you would light, but you would have a problem with saying the blessing. You would have a problem with saying the bracha.
Like in a gas station, they let you do it.
Yeah,
Or,
yeah. Yeah.
You could say a bracha in a gas station and what it was safe?
No, the bracha is a problem, because according to Rabbi and we mentioned the Rishonim who hold this way, the obligation is in the home. So if you don't have a home, now maybe you can say a car is large enough to be considered a home. It's that. So there's a little room you can say if you light in your car, the entrance of your car.
Excuse me, the car is considered your home as far as chametz and pesach, right? You have to clean your car.
You have to clean all your property, even if you're homeless, you still have to get rid of your chametz.
It's not because it's at home.
No.
So if you had a little money, extra money, and you really wanted to be mountain, you're traveling on a highway, you hadn't planned on stopping, did you go rent a hotel room just for the lighting of the candles, just so you can light it on home? Yeah?
So I think we can say that I think we can all agree that a car is a rishus hayachid. It does, you could even sleep in your car. Maybe by car we can be more lenient. We can say you can light even with a bracha. It's not a problem in your personal car.
And in a hotel room, could you light with a bracha?
Yes, that's your home for the night.
That is
Yeah.
consistent.
But then we're touching on the area of also who's at home. Has anyone been left at home? If your wife's lighting for you at home, then your wife can be yotze you. But nonetheless, whenever you're traveling, you're not staying by a host, we always light candles. The question is, do you light with a bracha or not? So as I said, if you're staying in a hotel, etc., when you pay for a hotel, you're not staying there for free. Pay. It's yours for the night. So the Marsham also says regarding a train, he holds that by a train, when you pay for a ticket, you own that seat for the night. So it's like your home for that night. So he says, in other words, he says, I agree you need to own a home in order to light. I don't argue on Rashi and Tosfos, God forbid. But this is your home. You paid for it. It's my home. Where does it say your home has to be big and lavish? Maybe you can have a sardine home. You have a little home, a baby home. You light there. Bottom line is, because since this is a mechlekes, it's best to avoid the situation, get a child for you to say the bracha for, or just light without a blessing.
Question. You and your wife are traveling,
Yes.
and it's very unlikely, but let's say that you have a minor child at home. Can they light candles for you?
A child who's below bar bas mitzvah cannot fulfill the mitzvah for the household, but he is to light for himself. So he should light for himself, hopefully he's old enough to supervise and make sure his father.
She at home. Did you say minor girl child, or did you say?
It doesn't matter, male or female, they should light at home on their own, because they're not yotze with their parents when their parents are not lighting at home. They would say a bracha for themselves, and the parents would also light for themselves when the time comes.
Can't be the other way around where the parents far away and you cover the child.
No. Okay, so we already discussed that women, on the one hand, fulfill the obligation with the father of the home, both based on Ashkenazi and Sephardi practice, but nonetheless, technically, they are also chayiv in the mitzvah, and if there is no father of the home, then they are the ones that have to light the Chanukah candles. So that would also apply not just in the case where they are single and they're living by themselves or with other girls, they would have the responsibility of lighting, such as in the seminaries here, all the girls have a responsibility of lighting candles. Now, they don't have to each individually light. They can join together and make a put some money in together to buy the menorah, buy the oil, buy the matches, etc. and one can light on behalf of all of them in that dorm room.
Their fathers,
Each
wherever
room.
they are, can't light for them?
No, because, so that's a, right, so there's a major debate amongst the poskim regarding can a father or a non-spouse be mitzi his family members that are not at home. The original halacha in the Gemara and in the Shulchan Aruch is as follows. A husband has traveled away from home. The wife is lighting the candles in his home on his behalf. That's the halacha. She has to light because he's not home, so she has to light. Is he yaitze with her, or does he have to light additionally? And the answer is that technically he is yaitze with her, but that's only if certain conditions are met. Like he's staying in an area that contains Chanukah candles, meaning he's staying in someone's home who's lighting candles. And if he's staying in someone's house who's also lighting candles, then he's yaitze and he doesn't have his own room. He's, sleeping on the couch type of thing. Or he's sleeping, he's bunking up with two of the kids in the family. Then he's yaitze with them. He's yaitze with his wife, and he doesn't have to light in the new place. But if those conditions weren't fulfilled, they give him his own room, or he's staying at a hotel, then in all those cases, he can't be yaitze with his wife, he lights on his own. Practically, the Ashkenazi custom is the man always to light. But that's the original law. The original is recorded only regarding a husband being yaitze with his wife. It's never recorded regarding the father or anyone else in the Shulchan Aruch and in the Talmud. So this brought up the question, what about other family members? So definitely we agree that if the wife traveled and the husband stays at home, since they're kachad gufa, they're considered like one body, as we said before, that's why the wives, even of Ashkenazim, don't light. So here too, if the husband lights at home, his wife is yaitze, even if she's not at home. Even if she's going away, she's staying at her mother's house for the night, her mother's lighting candles, so she's yaitze with her husband. She doesn't have to light in her new place.
Bracha levatala, if she does.
According to some poskim, it could be a bracha levatala, and if she does want to light in her own, she would have to have in mind to not be yaitze with her husband.
And he would have to remind that he didn't see her?
Well, one way is enough.
Okay.
One way is enough. She has to be not yaitze with her husband. And so, because the Minhagei only applies when you're all in the same home. When you're not all in the same home, when already people are in different places, then you are yaitze technically with a husband or wife, and you have to have in mind not to be yaitze. Also, a husband. We tell the husband that he should have in mind not to be yaitze with his wife, and then he'll light whenever he wants. But if he didn't have, or let's say he didn't know this, I learned the halacha in the Gemara, I learned Gemara Shabbos, had in mind to be yaitze with my wife. Now I'm told that the custom is that Ashkenazim won't light on their own. I didn't know this. So we tell him, you're right, Ashkenazim won't light on their own when you're in the same house. But now that you're traveling and you didn't have in mind to not be yaitze with your wife, and your wife already lit, and she had in mind to be yaitze, it's a problem. You could light, but not with a bracha. Now, regarding other family members, so we have a major split here. Some say that it only applies to wife. It's a special wife-husband relationship that one can be mitzi the other. It doesn't work for any other family member. So even if both parents are at home, let's say their son is in yeshiva, or the son is in the army, or the son is traveling for a night of Chanukah, okay, or daughter,
Seminary girls.
okay,
Yeah.
or the seminary girls right here. So some say that even if the father and mother, they say, Areinu mechavin l'hoitzi, I'm having completely in mind to be mitzi my son and daughter that are elsewhere, some say it doesn't work. It doesn't work. It doesn't help because they are not that type of relationship. Chachamim never allowed a father or sister or mother or daughter or son to be mitzi the other relatives. It's only a spouse privilege. Okay, special marriage privileges. According to this approach, they would all have to light Hanukkah candles with a bracha. Even if you're starting, you would have to light with a bracha. It makes no difference what you are. You're not yaitze the mitzvah. The second approach, whoever is that no, it's not limited to your husband or wife. It's the fact that the people who you are dependents of are lighting for you, are lighting in your home where you usually live, and therefore they see it's practical. Sephardim, for whatever reason, took that approach. That's the custom for many years. The Yeshiva Bachrim, Sephardi Yeshiva Bachrim, don't light candles. They rely either on the Rosh Yeshiva lighting for them. They consider like students of his, like part of his household, or they follow that the father is mitzi them. So that's why in Sephardi Yeshivas they generally do not light, even if they're on their own. Let's say a Bacher is going away for the night, he won't light Hanukkah candles. He'll rely on his father. That's the ruling of the Sephardi poskim way back, going back to the Ben Ish Chai, Kaf HaChaim, and Rabbi Yosef, and others.
If he was gonna rely on the Rosh Hashiva, just like the parents were on the picture for whatever reason, the public, the lighting in the base midrash.
Yeah, lighting in the base
okay?
midrash,
That's
correct.
okay? Why is that okay?
Well, it depends. I mean, it's all part of the house. It's like one big home. It depends. Is it a bacher that shows up to learning or doesn't show up? My Rosh Hashiva, when I was learning in the literature yeshiva, so the question came up regarding, because most yeshivas, I think all yeshivas actually have seder, they have learnings. Learning is in session during Chanukah. They take a little break for Chanukah lighting, but learning is officially in session. So it's a little it ruins the schedule when you have to take a break right before Shkia and then light candles. The yeshiva would always tell everybody, if you're a person who's makbid with time, with zman, during the whole year you show up for seder on time, you show up for learning on time. So here too, you should be makbid and light on time. But if you're chafif, you're not makbid on the times of learning, so here too, light when seder is over, light at 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock at night. Anyways. So on this point, Ashkenazim practically we rule that you're not Yitzhak with your father, you're not Yitzhak with your mother, you're not Yitzhak with your son, you're not Yitzhak with your daughter. Only husband and wife, and therefore all these individuals, they all have to light on their own to fulfill the mitzvah. Now, do they have to be present? Let's say my wife is away, okay, or my daughter is away, or my son is away, and I'm lighting at home, and it's not they're sleeping out somewhere else, in which case they would have to light on their own, but they're coming back home. They're just not home right now. Is that okay, or are they Yitzhak? The answer. Since the mitzvah is on the household, once it's in the household, you fulfill your obligation no matter where you are. However, we have a very secondary problem. That's with the bracha of Shas and Nisim. The blessing of Shas and Nisim is a blessing that technically has to be said even if you're not lighting candles at all. As soon as you see Chanukah candles, you're supposed to bless Hashem for doing the miracle. So in this case, you're right, she's Yitzhak the mitzvah of lighting candles, even though she wasn't home at the time of the lighting. But what about the bracha of Shas and Nisim? So in this case, we have a major dispute amongst Rishonim, a major contradiction in the Mechaber is how the ruling should be. In one area, he rules like one side of the Rishonim, in another area, a few chapters later, rules like another side of the Rishonim, and we all caught this contradiction, and all the places can discuss what's going on here. How can you rule two opposite ways? In none event, we're entering into a sibuch, a complex situation. And therefore, the best thing is two options: either to make sure that all the family members are home at the time of the lighting, or if that's not possible, then whoever's not home should go ahead and try to join another Chanukah lighting to hear the blessings, and thereby be Yitzhak the blessings in that way.
Okay, they couldn't do their own. They couldn't do their own later.
Well, the boys can. The boys, Ashkenazi boys, Mahadrim, the Sephardi boys who don't light, they would be in the same pickle. So what would they do, the Sephardi boys? They should go to a different menorah lighting and hear the blessing from someone else. The Hilchos and Nisim have in mind to be Yitzhak with them, saying the bracha. Regarding what overrides what, if you have the ability to light on time, by Shkia, or by Tzes Kechavim, with less people versus later on with more people, what should override? And the answer, back in the day, in the original halacha, definitely you had to light on time. If you passed the half hour after Tzes Kechavim, you lost the mitzvah. Today, however, that we all light inside the house, and the mitzvah is for the home, there are more rights. It's not so important anymore to have the time of exactly by sunset or exactly by Tzes Kechavim. And you could delay it to even later. Nonetheless, the custom is to light on time. That's what we try to do. But in the event that other family members are not going to be there, it is okay to delay it until later. Certainly this applies if the husband's not home yet, or the wife's not home yet. The best thing is to wait for them to come home and then to do the lighting.
Outdoor lighting obviously is not, even with regular flame. And
Yes, so by outdoor lightings, it's very important, and I thought everybody knows this, but I guess not everybody knows this. So it's people have to know, and I can suggest that by public menorah lightings, they should always announce to the public, maybe one time before, one time after, that nobody was Yitzhak with this lighting. There are people who erroneously think that, I'll just fulfill my obligation with the public menorah lighting. You can't. So too in a shul. Just because you joined the lighting of a shul, even if you were given the honor of lighting the candles, you didn't fulfill nothing.
Even the outdoor guy who lights it down.
Nobody. You don't fulfill the mitzvah, your personal obligation lighting candles. And therefore, it would be very good if the MC, whoever's in charge, would tell everyone we are now giving a demonstration of how everyone is able to light at home. And anyone who doesn't yet have a Chanukah set at home, we are distributing them, and they can go ahead and take it home and light. But to think that this is the Yetz of the Mitzvah, they're not Yetz of the Mitzvah.
Is it proper to, then improper to say the bracha outdoors to them?
Oh, so regarding the bracha outdoors, so this is a major debate with a few different approaches. We all know that in shul, we have a custom to light with a bracha. And there's different reasons mentioned in the Rishonim behind how this is allowed. We just said nobody's yaitz in shul. So how can you light with a blessing? Well, some say because it's because of the Persume Nisa, the Chachamim gave a special takana, a special institution, and in a shul, because so many people are there, and it publicizes the miracle, you can light with a blessing. So some people want to attach and say, well, let's then say, it really has nothing to do with the shul in and of itself, it has to do with the publication of the miracle. So lighting anywhere where a lot of people are found, I should be able to light with a blessing. That is what those who light with a blessing by public menorah lightings rely upon. And that is how some poskim rule. The Oz Nidbu, famous, came to the defense of Chabad Chassidim, who are accustomed to do that, to light by the public menorah lightings. However, many other poskim argue, and they say that you cannot make a new institution. When the Chachamim made the institution of lighting candles, it was in the shul to publicize the miracle. It's good that we found a similar reason or advantage of doing it elsewhere that doesn't allow us to say the blessing. So while I think most people who do public menorah lightings light with a bracha, the best thing would be to avoid the situation. And how do you avoid the situation? Very simple. Make sure you have a Jewish child there who's below the age of bar mitzvah, and you say, not only are we giving out Chanukah, we're demonstrating how to light Chanukah candles, we're also demonstrating how to say the blessings properly. And since we have children below bar mitzvah who are there, we're educating them how to say the bracha, and then it's no longer a bracha.
Full out name of God and everything, I'm going to do it.
Hold on yards. In fact, if you're educating them, you can say even more brachas. You say the bracha of the, Shasabri Kotzark, you say whatever you want. It's education.
For that matter, couldn't you rely on the adult doing it as an educational
No,
maneuver?
the education only works for children. For an adult, we don't allow educating them in blessings unless they're actually fulfilling the mitzvah right now.
They're putting tefillin on an adult.
At the time they're putting on tefillin, you can educate them in the blessing.
You can't.
You can, but if they're not putting on tefillin at the moment, you can't tell them, when you go home, say Baruch Atah Hashem, you say Hashem's.
But while they're doing it, you could actually...
Yes, during the time of the mitzvah, of course. You can say and they repeat after you.
So why can't these people at the time of lighting the...
Because no one fulfills their mitzvah there. It's not the time of anyone's obligation. There's no obligation there.
Okay, that's it.
So if in the shul, and if you do say the bracha in the evening, right?
Mm-hmm.
So then, but you wouldn't in the morning if you're lighting.
No, nobody says a blessing in the morning. Even though there is a custom to light the Chanukah candles in the morning in shul by Shachris, and the Chabad custom today is even to have it lit 24 hours. Where are the candles here? They're lit 24 hours? They're out. That's why I didn't see them. Yeah. So there is a minhag that the Rebbe pushed to have candles lit for 24 hours in the shul, but of course it has to, safety precautions have to be taken. Okay, we're going to do one more. We'll do two more. This is the Chanukah miracle, how an hour shiur lasted another hour. Okay, we'll wrap things up soon. How long do you have to light Chanukah? So I mentioned this briefly, I believe was your question, that, so I want to now give over the whole deal on this question. How long do you have to light candles? So I mentioned earlier, from pure Talmudic basis, you had to light by sunset or by Tzeitzis Chachamim, depending on whichever opinion you held by, or you followed, whichever approach, and from then you have a half hour. If you didn't light within that half hour, You lost the mitzvah. Today. How do we rule today? Today that the main mitzvah is lighting inside the home. So the Ramah says, as I said before, you don't need to be makir on it anymore. However, some poskim hold, and also the Machaber holds that way, by the way, that if a half hour passed, you can still light with a blessing. That's the understanding of the Shulchan Aruch. You can still light with a blessing even past the time. And the reason is, what we already introduced, that the publicizing for the public is not the main, it's not the invalidating factor of the mitzvah. It's an added asset, but not the main factor, not the only factor. However, nonetheless, there are poskim, there are Rishayim who hold even today, after the half hour, the mitzvah is over, and therefore many are particular not to say a blessing anymore after the half hour. Halacha l'maisa. For Ashkenazim, we follow the ruling of the Magen Avram, the Mishnah Berurah, and many others. And that is, I said this in the beginning of the shiur, that so long as you have at least one person awake, you have until Aleis HaShachar, until Aleis HaShachar is, let's say, 3 o'clock nowadays, maybe a little earlier, you have until that time that you can light with a blessing, light the Chanukah candles. So even if you came home at 1 o'clock in the morning, you go ahead and you light Chanukah candles.
But if you're alone,
And there's no one with you, so first wake him up.
nobody's home, nobody's up, nobody's
If there's
sleeping.
nobody around and you're all by yourself, then you'd have to lie without a blessing. It depends where you live. If you live in Manhattan at 1 o'clock, nobody's around. That's when everybody's around. In
On
the
the
morning.
street.
Yeah.
Far away down the street, maybe you're.
Everyone's still around, so you can still light. It's like daylight, the city that never sleeps. Depends where you are. If you're in Sfas, you have a shiur even by Shkia, where if you can you have it depends where you are. So, but definitely, if you can get at least one person, 2 people is even better. Now, regarding what we mentioned that you can move the Chanukah candles or extinguish them once the half hour is over. So we actually have a few opinions on this. That's the ruling in the Shulchan Aruch is that once a half hour is over, that's it. The mitzvah is done. Doesn't matter when you lit it. The half hour is up. You can after nightfall. If you lit before nightfall, you wait more than half hour until it's half hour after nightfall. And then you can go ahead and you can do whatever you want. You can use the lights, you can extinguish the lights, you can move the menorah somewhere else. Or there are other opinions. There are some opinions that say that today they will light inside the house. The mitzvah should apply until people go to sleep. Just like in Talmudic times, we said they had to be lit for a half hour because that's the time that people went to sleep. They were outside still for another half hour, and it ended after a half hour because that's when they're no longer around. So we should apply the same thing here, that it should be lit until people go to sleep. So it says the Mishmar Shalom, that if your household stays up till 12 o'clock at night, put enough oil so it lasts till 12 o'clock at night. Others say a different argument, that the oil is placed for the mitzvah. So once it's placed for the mitzvah, even if it lasts more than half hour, the whole thing is mitzvah oil, so you can't extinguish it, you shouldn't move it, could do tomorrow sign, you shouldn't do other things, even past the half hour. Practically, the best thing because of this is to make a tanai, a stipulation. I mentioned this in the Sundays class, that you should stipulate and say that I do not intend for the oil to be holy and sanctified for the mitzvah past the time that it is required according to Allah. And then you can go ahead and extinguish it and move it and do whatever you need to do with the candles. Okay, I think that's it. I'm going to wrap it up here.
Anybody who didn't, or anybody?
Everybody should have a Freilich and Chanukah. And of course, to be Yotze, the Minhagei, right? The Minhagei of the Rambam's father. Rambam's father testifies to
Please
it.
go, take it home. To
Oil-based.
Kids, whatever, take one, whatever.
Sifkan Yad.